In this video, we steal an idea from Squidmar to paint our new Sanctifier Kill Team. Play the music. Hello and welcome to another Scuffed Hammer video. My name is Hammer, and today we are painting the Sanctifier Kill Team. Now, I apologise in advance, I will be using an airbrush quite a bit in this video today. So if you don't have one, I'm sure there are ways for you to find a way around it, so why don't you stick around anyway and see what we come up with. Now that we have that out of the way, I'm sure that if you have been in this hobby for any amount of time, you have heard of some of the greatest painters on the channel, Squidmar. And I'm sure you've heard of their series where they go around to people in their country who have massive piles of grey shame that they want to tackle. In the video they posted on the 24th of April 2025, I saw something that I absolutely loved. Lukas painted a Warcry team that heavily utilised OSL. And finding out that a lot of people near me are into Kill Team, I wanted to paint mine up and give it a red hot go. So, let me get started, and I'll continue to explain my thought process as we go. Now, a few things up front. And first off is, you might notice the difference in mic quality. And that's because I was using the microphone that came with my headset, but it died, so I had to go out and buy a new mic. And since I'm making videos, I thought I'd buy a proper one. Now, when it comes to building these models, there are a few options. I have decided to leave out the preachers, because they just didn't bring that much to the army. So, I have built the Confessor, the Cherub, the Conflagrator, the Death Cult Assassin, Drill Abbot, Miracleist, Missionary, Missionary with Flamer, Persecutor, Reliquant, and Salvationist. And while our local team does do WYSIWYG, that is what you see is what you get, I decided to just build what I thought would look coolest to paint. And talking about painting, now is the perfect time to talk about why I decided to steal Lukas's design. And to put it simply, the reason is because I never intended to build the Sanctifier Kill Team. Yes, that's right, I bought that entire Kill Team box just for the Saint Celestine statue. So these models were just going to sit on my shelf for probably years before I built them, just because they had so much detail and the idea of sitting there and painting them all just bored me to tears. Just a quick aside, I'm using a lot of sisters heads I have spare from previous kits, just because I found a lot of the Sanctifier heads to be really ugly. Anyway, that's when I saw that video by Squidmar. I saw two kill teams, kind of similar, but I preferred Lukas's, heavily utilising non-metallic metal and OSL. And while I don't know how to do non-metallic metal, and this is not the video where I'm doing it for the first time, I do know how to do OSL. So I thought that I could cheat the non-metallic metal a little bit by doing some dry brush and a wash, and then do the OSL just a little bit differently. And this is a great spot to talk about my thought process behind the models. I didn't want to directly steal the exact theme, but I did love the fire aspect. So I kept the fire, because there's flamers in this set, and decided that the perfect way to make it mine was to add some holy light coming from the models. And you'll see how I achieve both of those in just a little bit. Moving on to the painting step. To start with, this was a bit difficult because I picked probably the coldest morning all winter to attempt to do this. When I first woke up, it was a freezing -10 degrees outside. That's Celsius for all those freedom unit loving members of our community. So I had to have a janky setup of a space heater balancing on a pile of boxes just to warm up the air around my airbrush so that the paint would spray on properly. But once it did, it was on to dry brushing. I didn't do anything special here. I picked Wraithbone instead of white because it was a creamier colour and I'm not a massive fan of pure white. And my goal with this dry brushing was to kind of make it look like a pale moonlight rather than a harsh, sterile light, like the kind you'd get from a fluorescent bulb. Now, I did go a little heavy-handed because I knew that I was going to come back later and darken it up with a bluey black wash. Now, I'm doing dry brushing and a wash in replacement of the non-metallic metal that Lukas does in his design. And that's because of two reasons. The first being, as mentioned earlier, I don't know how to paint non-metallic metal, and two, the reason I don't know how to paint non-metallic metal is because I think it kind of looks a bit ugly. So instead of doing non-metallic metal, we're cheating the system a little bit. Once the dry brushing is done, we're going to come in with a black Templar wash thinned down with Lamium Medium. Now, this is a little trick I learnt from my Black Templar video. If you want to go watch that, I'd recommend it. Where I used somebody else's paint scheme to paint a model for them and send it to them. And during that model, I used this specific wash, and I really loved the way it worked. So I thought I'd steal it and use it here. And it works perfectly. It just brings down the harshness of the Wraithbone just enough to make it look more like Moonlight. And it gives it this nice little pale blue tinge to it, which just makes it look even more like these guys are striding through the darkness of night. And the great thing about this is that once you've applied this wash, your models are now battle ready. You've got 3 colors. Which is great, because I don't want my Death Cult Assassin to have any OSL. I want him to lurk in the shadows, hidden by darkness, lurking and stalking his prey, ready to pounce out from the shadows. And I feel that adding any OSL would ruin that effect for me. So when moving on to this next step of cracking out our airbrush and base coating some white where we want our OSL to go, I leave the Death Cult Assassin out. I then focus on the areas of the model that I'd like the glow to come from, and then making sure to have some overspill so that the light looks like it's actually glowing rather than just coming from the source. And I'm not going to lie, this was a real test of my airbrushing skills. And I think for the first time, I can truly say I'm happy with the level of control and airflow I've gotten out of my airbrush. And here is our second deviation from Lukas's scheme. To get a soft pale yellow glow, I'm going to soften down this yellow colour with the same white we just used. I'm doing this because I want a holy light shining from 3 of the models and reflecting on a few others. I want holy light to come from the Confessor, the Miracleist, and the Salvationist, while at the same time having flames emanate from the Persecutor, Reliquant, and one of the Missionaries, which I'll get going with this red colour. Now for this, I would recommend assembling all the models in a position you'd like to display them in once they're all painted. This helps with figuring out how you want the light to cast onto the other models that don't have a source of glow. This is how I figured out that I wanted both of my missionaries to be cast in the flame's glow, and that my drill abbot would be catching light from both sides, bridging that gap between holy flame and holy light. Now I'm moving on to orange, and I'm making sure to not cover all of the red as I spray, so some of it still shows underneath and on the edges. Because when it comes to adding our third colour, which will be yellow, this will help define the glow and make it not look like it's just a flat colour. And as you can see here, before we've even started painting the actual light sources, that glow really works. Once we've finished with the flames, we'll just come back with that yellow, not diluting it this time, so that it's stronger at the source, where the holy light is emanating from. And then we're going to come in and paint the flames as a light source. And we're going to work in the opposite direction than we did for the glow. Starting by painting the flames white, then yellow, then orange, then red, and painting less and less of the flame as we go on. Then finishing up the flame with a bit of black, and I like to cheat by using a technical paint so it cracks, but you can use whatever you want. I also put the technical paint over the burnt corpse that I put on one of the Sanctifiers that I stole from a previous Sisters box. And while I am happy with the burnt corpse, it just didn't quite work with the glow because the crackle paint didn't crackle as much as I would have liked it. And as a final touch, what I didn't record, I'm just going to add a little bit of red to some of the eye lenses on some of the characters' heads, and then with that, it's about time for a final reveal. And with that, it's about time to end the video. I had a lot of fun taking a look at a picture of a set of models that I really like the scheme for and trying to reverse engineer it using my own skills. And I found it really fun to rely on my own skills rather than follow tutorial for a scheme I had no clue about. Well, that about wraps it up. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click on one of these videos that is showing up right about now. That's all from me. Over to you now, Scuffed.